But there didn't really seem to be a lot of leadership books that centered on the life of a public servant, right? What does it mean to be a leader and providing public service, right? The American public expects a certain thing. And this set of people have a direct impact on Americans, right? And so I started down this path of I interviewed all these different Black and brown women to understand their journey. And it was all executive women in various sectors of public sector, whether it was fire, police, federal, state, local, county, that type of government, and said, hey, I want to understand your journey. You got to the top of the journey. Tell us your story. And in those stories, there was a lot of lessons that we were able to learn.
Today's guest is Angela McCullough. Angela's journey started as an FAA technician, and she ultimately became the acting deputy COO. She's known for being direct, courageous, self-aware, and deeply human in how she leads. And now she's helping others do the same.
This episode is brought to you by Kobeck. We help people turn complexity into outcomes that matter. Stay tuned for more. The views expressed in this episode are those of the participants and do not reflect the views of their employer.
Miss Angela McCullough, welcome to the show. It's an honor to have you here. I was trying to summarize. We're talking about how to summarize your career at the FAA. There's too many executive positions, too many big roles. I'll just say very important, former executive in aviation. Now you've got your own LLC, Angela McCullough LLC. So welcome to the show. It's an honor to have you here.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here. Looking forward to the conversation. And as much as you want to chat with me, I'm interested in hearing some of your perspectives as well. So thank you.
Wonderful. I appreciate that.
Yes.
I always like to start these things with just kind of going back in time. I mean, where are you from? Where'd you grow up?
Detroit, Michigan.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Are you a Lions fan?
No, I could care less about sports.
Okay.
However, you will catch me wearing a lot of Detroit gear. I'll wear Lions gear, Tigers gear, especially when I'm traveling. I like to represent my city. It starts a lot of conversations because people have a lot of ideas about Detroit. So I like to educate.
Yeah. So Detroit has had, I feel like this little, for people who have never been there, and I haven't really been there. I've been in Dearborn, but I feel like it had like a downtime in the past, say 10 to 20 years, but now it's like resurgent, right? Isn't it like a really hot spot to move to?
It is. It's flourishing. And it kind of makes sense, right? When you think about birthplace of the automobile, there is a lot of work that is going in terms of like drones and AAM and UAS. And so it's exciting to see a lot of what's going on in that segment of the aviation sector. I think they're positioned to play a pivotal role in how that sector grows. Particularly, it's right across from Canada, so you have the international piece, cross-border work, a lot of exciting things going on. So I like being able to share that with people. It was down, but not out.
Yeah, for sure. No, for sure.
Yeah.
And even the sports teams were pretty good
Right.
too. But so how was it back when you were growing up? I mean, what was the town like? And did it shape? 'Cause I think where people are from does have a shape on.
It does. It shaped. Obviously, I'm retired, so that kind of gives you an idea of the era in which I was growing up. It was I can remember the Coleman A. Young, who was the mayor, and he was the mayor for a lot of years. And so I can remember some of the good times of the city when it was flourishing right on into the downturn, right? Like many metropolitan or urban cities. There was a major downturn. So, there was crime, there was drugs, and it played out, right? It played out in the community. Of course, in my family didn't play, so we weren't out in those streets. It was very old school. People will understand when the lights come on, you better have your butt, home. So I like to say that I'm a city girl with a country girl's heart because I grew up in the city and the city certainly shaped, framed who I am and my experiences. But I also had the benefit of spending a lot of times in summers out in the country. Northern Michigan is some of the most beautiful country you could ever imagine. And I can say that having done some traveling in the world. And so I had the opportunity to get away from the concrete and to connect with people that didn't look like me, didn't think like me, a different way of life. And I think that helped me early on have a broader perspective on life beyond the city as well as building relationships beyond just the maybe people who look like you, right?
All right. So you grew up there your whole life up until
I
college,
did.
basically?
No, I went to the military.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So I spent a couple years in the military, and because in the military, I went into electronics. I worked on navigational equipment. When I got out, the FAA was looking for people that had that exact experience and skill set. And so I was out for about a year and a half, a couple years. And then I started my career. I wanted something different. So we didn't have a ton of money. I did get scholarships, but they were scholarships for schools in Michigan. And I wanted to get out of Michigan. And where I wanted to go, it was costly. We didn't have money to go. And I thought, I want out of Michigan. I was afraid if I stayed in Michigan, I didn't know what I might be doing, and so it became let me go and do something that would get me out of the state.
Which branch?
Air Force, of course. Like, is
Okay.
there another?
Oh, yeah, that is fair. Jeff would agree.
Yes, he would.
So when was it in the military or after your first kind of foray into any form of leadership, whether by title or not, right? Because as you know, leadership isn't necessarily management or a title or a position. It's basically taking care of the people around you. Was there a moment that you realized like this is either something for you or it was an interesting moment for you, early on?
That's a great question. I am an older sister. So
Mm.
I think I always, because I was looking out for or mentoring or supporting, I think I always did that just naturally in the family. And when I got out of the military, before I came to work for the FAA, I was working for Lady Foot Locker, and I was in their management training program. So I did sales for a while and was pretty good at it. And I was like, hey, I think I might want to manage one of these. It's pretty cool. So
Yeah.
I went through their leadership development program, finished the program, and I was living in Arizona at the time. And I was waiting to get a store in California because I wanted to go back to California because that's where I spent my time in the military.
Oh,
And early 20s, very early 20s, yes.
very ambitious.
And hey, yeah, I was like, I'm a go big or go home, right? And in the process of waiting for a store to open, the FAA opportunity came along. So I think I would say it's a natural part of who I am in caring for others, which I do believe is a basis of leadership, right? You can drive and you can work on the mission, but you have to understand the mission is through people. And so you've got to care enough about those people, not in a I'm your pastor, psychologist kind of way, but in a humanity type of way. Care enough about you from a humanistic perspective, and understanding that, I believe in building that helps you actually execute on the mission. But I remember what really drove me into management at the FAA, quite frankly, was what I experienced as ineffective leaders. And so many people aspire to that, and they want that title. And they jump into it and they want to take it on. A lot of times it's because of the title or the promotion or the money. And I don't believe enough people really stop and think about why. Why is it that I really want to do this? And when you are in a technical field, much like like a lot of folks in your company, right? When you're in a technical field, a lot of times you're promoted because of your technical expertise. That does not always translate to the people, the people part of things. So I was working for people who were technical people because I was an electronics technician, right, working on navigational equipment. And many of the people who have been promoted into place, they could drive the mission, but they were just really disconnected from the other stuff that I felt like was so important. I found it was people who couldn't have a difficult conversation, or they call it a difficult conversation. I don't. I call it effectively communicating what is going on. But there were challenges and people wouldn't take it on. And I thought, oh my goodness, I can do this. I'm like, I can do this. And so it was the idea that I believed that I could be a better leader, quite frankly, than the people that I had been working for. And so I was like, well, if I believe that, I better stick my toe into it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you make a lot of good points there. So eh, the being technical is great, and that can
Yes.
help in leadership. Although it can help, but it's not the be all end all because, I mean, I'm not technical. There's a lot of people that work at Quebec. But that they're supposed to be the technical. I'm supposed to support them, right?
Right.
But it helps, of course, in certain fields. But yeah, people do get promoted based on individual contribution and less about, what they've done for the rest of the team, which is what, leaders would do. But it's also, I guess, society talks about like, this is how you're supposed to advance your career. Like by the time you're a certain age, you're not a manager, something's wrong with you, right? And like you don't fit into your other age group. And that's not good, because then that means everybody should be a manager or a leader. And maybe they should, maybe they shouldn't. But they need the training and they want to do it. That's the other thing. I think people they think they want it, but I'll tell them like, you really want it, because it's not easy, and it's dealing with people. Now you're caring for people. So sounds good. Maybe there's a promotion there or money or something, but do you actually want to do it? Because I met some former executives that said, hey, I don't want to do that anymore. Like I've done it for 30 years, because it's a weight. You're responsible for other people. And so if somebody tells me they want to do it, I want to make sure it's for the right reasons. And then also the path to get there, from a success perspective, we're trying to work on a way to get people, it's easy just to give someone a title.
Right.
They've been asking for it. They're pretty good. Give it to them. But then how do you know they're going to be successful if you don't give them the training? I mean, everything in life has training. I mean, the best surgeon went through a ton of training. You just weren't born a good surgeon. That goes for everything. And I think for some reason, for management and leadership, people assume that you don't need to learn anything. I don't know. It doesn't seem that way.
They do. You said a lot in what you just finished saying. So there is no cookie cutter one way approach. And I think many of people do get pushed into management because people say, well, that's what you should be doing is, it's the next step. It's the this and the that. And like you said, they haven't stopped to really think about the why they want to do it. And people are unaware of even what their strengths are. So if you are technical, whatever that means, like technical, and I just don't mean, an engineer, architect. I mean, technical, you could be in budget, finance. That's very technical work, and you're getting pushed or promoted. And without even thinking about the why do you want to do it? And even being aware of what does what not good leadership looks like. What does good leadership look like? Right? Do you know it when you see it or when you experience it? And then begin to understand, well, what was good about that? And do I have, what do I bring to the table that would make me a good or effective leader? I think those are a lot of questions or conversations that don't take place. So I'm happy to hear that those are conversations that you're having with people about, well, why is it that you want to do it? Because it's not fun often. Oftentimes there's levels of frustration. Sometimes there's sadness. Like people don't talk about the sadness that comes along with having ideas that you're trying to drive and put forward and influence. Sometimes the answer is no. And being okay with understanding that, goodness, I did all this and the answer is no, right? And you can feel a letdown. Sometimes it is nice just to be responsible for yourself, to say, I work from 8 to 5. I come in, I go home. I have no phone. I don't have the human attachment, right, of having to respond. I think where we do make the mistake is automatically assuming that as an individual contributor, you are automatically going to be good. I've sat in so many rooms and said, oh, wow, you see how they managed this and that and the other. Maybe we should be considering them to be the next this. And you're like, well, why? How did you go from they delivered this well to suddenly now they are responsible not for just this, but also responsible for these people and setting the direction and making sure the work gets done and collaborating with others and partnership. Yeah, they did this well, but they're not even effective communicators, right? So we get trapped into they're great here and automatically assume that it applies over in leadership. And to your point about training, most companies, that's the first thing that they drop. When money get tight, the first thing that they do is remove any types of leadership training. And you said, okay, so you want to continue to deliver or ROI in your company or grow or whatever the case may be, meet your mission. In my case, FAA, we have a mission. American taxpayer expects us to deliver on that mission. Can we make sure that the people can lead somebody? It's a funny thing. I used to say, I would, say to my son, like, if nothing else, I have one child. He's a grown man now. I'm going to make sure that you're able to lead your way out of a paper bag that's open on both ends. Because we worked for people who it's open on both sides, and you can't even move us through it. And so we make a lot of assumptions, I think, and they don't always pan out. And one of the big things with that is, as a leader that selects a leader that doesn't pan out, most of the time we're unwilling to have that conversation and say, this is not working. This is not a good fit. You're not effective. People are uncomfortable with those conversations.
How are you? So that, I circled that and wrote down that you're very comfortable with uncomfortable conversations.
Yes.
Is that just you from the beginning, or is that something that you practice?
I certainly practice. I think part of it might be just maybe a part of my personality, but it evolved very greatly. And it's funny. In fact, one of the people that works for your company was my boss, and he gave me some amazing feedback. And the feedback that he gave me was about the way that I communicate. And specifically, what he told me is that I was over talking, or I had already made my point in the first couple minutes, but I started to ramble.
Mhm.
And he said, in the rambling, you're losing people. So I had a decision to make. Was I willing to really hear what it is that he said and to reflect on how I was showing up, or did I just push it to the side? I decided that that was feedback that he was giving me that was really for my benefit. And it came from a place of him wanting me to be the best. And I certainly evolved. Part of that is learning how to clearly communicate that and say, I'm generally not afraid to say what needs to be said. And that comes from working from so many people who won't. They will sit in a room, silence, knowing that there's something that needs to be uncovered, a perspective, and they remain quiet. And then you walk out of the room, everybody's uncomfortable.
Mhm.
Nothing was decided, nothing was unearthed. And if you're unwilling to do that, your team's not going to grow because you never surface anything that's going on. So I don't necessarily like to do it from the standpoint of, like, it's not a joyful thing because people feel a certain kind of way. But I have learned the majority of the time, somebody's going to come back to you. That person's going to come back to you later and say, no one has ever told me that. I'm glad you said that. I was unaware. Thank you. Sometimes it does ruin relationships too.
Yeah, it does.
That's
But
true.
that's part of it. I think that's part of leadership is not being willing to, I guess, risk relationships. But in a way, because if you're doing it for the benefit and the intent is good, then you cannot fully control how that person's going to react. So what are some tips on, well, let's just start even with committing to giving back the hard conversation, to say the hard conversation. There's tips on how to actually have the conversation, but when do you think is the best timing? How do you set the person up so they're ready to receive it? Because I think sometimes each person receives it better at different times.
Mm-hmm.
Or some people need a preparation, like, hey, we're going to have a conversation, versus just like out of nowhere. Are there some things that you're like, oh, this kind of works pretty well with a lot of people?
It's individual. Here's what doesn't work. Do not catch people at the coffee pot and try to deliver them some feedback. Don't do that. It's a little unfair. They're at the coffee pot. Their mind is not even ready for that. So you got to know who the person is. And that's part of why I'm saying leading is about human connection. You have to understand something about those people. I'm going to say if it's your employees, right? Or even a colleague, you have to understand something about them, something about their style. You've worked with them. How do they respond to things? And so that is definitely number one. Number two is you have to think about how to deliver. I'm direct. but I understand the level of energy behind the directness depending on who the person is. Sometimes it is that conversation that you do need to give them a prep of a heads up of, hey, I want to have a conversation. I want to talk about what happened on January 15th in the meeting at 3 p.m. Bam. Tell them it's about being specific. The conversation is not about, you got to stick to what you saw and what you experienced and how it resonated in the meeting. This is what was said. This is how it was received. This is how I experienced it, right? You're not tearing people down, but you got to give them specifics. That is the worst thing in the world. Feedback that is not feedback that is not specific is not feedback.
Because you can't, what are you supposed to do about it? Like, something's bad. Well, how is it bad? Right?
I will tell you a story, true story. I was a frontline manager and my manager is doing my performance. And in the performance, he told me that I was too aggressive. And I said, okay. I said, can you name a specific example? Well, this is a true story. Well, no. And I said, well, in the future, it would help me if you're going to give me feedback, if you can cite specific examples. I go back and reflect. If you give me some feedback, I am going to think about it. You telling me that I'm aggressive, that doesn't help me. Of course, he was taken aback because remember, I'm the employee, but this is what I mean about communicating. Exactly.
Yeah, that's great.
Like, no, sir, if you want to help me, really help me. Don't just say something, rattle off something, because what that really means to me is you really weren't prepared to have a conversation with me. So you just said something off the cuff. No, don't do that. And those are the things. Don't talk off the cuff and be intentional about the conversation. If your motive is really about helping that person show up in the best light possible or giving them a chance for growth, then that is how you need to communicate that with them.
Yeah. And I 100%, I've been guilty of saying, actually, hopefully I haven't delivered a message like that. But when I've said like to somebody else, like, hey, this person, we need to talk to them. Sometimes I'll say something like that, like some catch-all. But then I realize that's because, and they'll be like, well, give me an example. Well, tell me before we talk to them. And I'd be like, I didn't know I had to write these down. Like, that's what I'm thinking in my mind. But I'm like, well, I'm not writing them down, but we should have addressed this. It's a symptom of not addressing it. Because then it just adds up and you're like, that person is never prepared for a meeting. But it's like, you can't never, ever be prepared. But maybe it happened 4 times the last year. You didn't say it the first time, second time, third time. Now you're coming at it with this generalization. And the person will be like, now they're offended probably because it's too much. And 2, you don't have any examples. So they probably should have said something to you previously if there was something, and then again, if it happened or some different method, I think.
Yeah. Even the first time.
Yeah.
Or at least the second time. Like for me, high value is timeliness. Be on time. Don't consistently show up to meeting late. Okay, once, it can happen. You text me, hey, I'm running late. My last meeting ran over. Great. Third time, I'm like, and I had those conversations, said, here's a pattern. Here and here and here, this, and this. Yes, you communicated with me. That was professional. However, I'm concerned that maybe you're not managing your time well. Mm-hmm. My expectation is, we have a problem with saying my expectation is. It's like, if I give you an expectation and you're offended, well, if I don't tell you what is expected, how do you know? And then how do I hold you accountable, right? If I've said, here's what the expectation is, and I've laid it out for you and I put it in writing, what part of that did you not understand? And I've given you the opportunity to gain clarity, because I'm also okay with that. Like, do you understand what this looks like in practice? And if you say yes, and I might say, okay, well, what do you think I mean by this? Like, let's really make sure that you and I have the same definitions for words and we have the same understanding. And so, and I'm recounting very real. And if any of these people listen to this, they may say, I've had that conversation with her. And I'm also equally as fast to say, this is fantastic. I have noticed the last several months, you have been on time. You have been early. You are making an effort. It's appreciated, right? So it's not just, hey, it went wrong, but it's, this is going wrong. It's a problem. Let's get it together. Here's why this matters. It's not simply just about because timeliness is a value for me, but I do believe that timeliness, ability to show up on time, signals a lot about what, if I'm on time, I respect your time. It doesn't matter what the title is. I just don't care. It should be on time, right? And so being able to also go back to people and like, thank you. I appreciate you've taken that and you're showing, I see the difference. Keep going. It's great. So you have to do a full circle. One of the things I think, or a challenge I believe that we have, is that we provide the feedback. We never address it again unless it continues to be a problem. Then we're frustrated or we're like, oh, here you go. And that's when we fall into the generalizations. Oh, they're never on time. They're always this and they're always that. Talk about them to other people. Like, these are all the behaviors that I've seen have leaders go and talk about your employee to another employee, just things that are so toxic in an environment. And so you don't want to do any of that. You want to close that feedback loop. Let them know this is great. You're knocking it out the park, or you're getting better. I see improvement. You're still not there yet.
Yeah. By the way, you talk about expectations. I think people have expectations in their head, and sometimes they don't keep them, and they wonder why that person doesn't have the same expectation. We talked about how in our office here, people don't really come in that much. Jen comes in a lot. Thank you. But so then I was like, kind of thinking, like, people, I think management gets like, we get frustrated, like, why are people coming in? But I'm like, well, I don't know. We never set the expectation. So I was thinking, I told them, I was like, well, with new hires, why don't we say we do expect you to come to events? We do expect you to come in during the interviews when they first start. So that a year later, when all of a sudden we're like, how come no one's coming in? It's like, well, nobody ever said it in the beginning. Doesn't mean you're not allowed to change what you want. It just, why not tell them up front? And it again, it's not like this hard, like, mandatory thing, but it's just like, what is expected of me as an employee? And if we don't talk about it, then I don't know how people know. I think we assume, just there's a lot of assumptions that they must feel the same thing we feel. There's expectations. By the way, Mr. Jeff Planty, I asked him for a few words that describe you. And it's some of the words you used. He said you were direct, you were courageous, you were self-aware, and you're humanistic. I think you used some of those words. So, talk to me about the self-aware piece, because that's kind of big for leadership. Do you feel like you're self-aware?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you have to be. So I have to be aware of my tendencies. So here's a prime example. Obviously, I retired out of aviation. I impact 24 hours. I mean, the last couple of years for me, it wasn't quite like that, but most of my career was spent with things are going on in the NAS. Responsiveness is required. Let's get it done. Not a lot of time for a whole lot of collaboration. This is what needs to be done. Let's move out and make it happen. When I'm not under that type of pressure, I'm pretty collaborative. Let's sit down. Let's talk about it. I like to hear other ideas and perspectives. I'm willing to adjust mine. I mean, sometimes I come in with no idea. Other times I have an idea of what I'm thinking, but I really want to hear from other people. And I'm very willing to, like, oh, I hadn't thought about that. Maybe maybe let's try that. So in calm, peaceful times, I can be very collaborative. When it is not peaceful, I am command and control. And I have to know that about myself. And when you're command and control, sometimes as a woman, that is perceived. It is not perceived in the way that men generally receive it. So I do have to be aware that the way my style can come off at those times can be a turnoff for people. I am aware that I love communication and conversation, but I have a lot of energy. So I talk with my hands, and I'm very expressive in my communication. That can turn some people off. So I've had to really learn how to watch the body language of people around me. Are they, leaning back from me or away? And then I'm like, okay, I'm being a little bit too intense for them. So, I still need to communicate, but maybe it's just, maybe I tone it down just a little bit. And I don't feel that I'm being a chameleon, because it is still me. I am being very aware of the audience that I'm talking to. So I'm aware of those types of things. I am aware that my directness, sometimes I don't care how soft it is or how loud it is, can be very off-putting to people. It could be a turn off. I'm not as a leader. The more mature my leadership became, if you will, the more I was open to really connecting with people around me. I think part of it upbringing, and then part of it of being such a male dominated space, and for many spaces and times in my career being the only woman in the space, kind of maybe kind of closed me off, where I was just like, yeah, I'm here, I'm gonna do my job, and you know don't ask me about anything else. I don't want to be your friend type of thing. And so that can be off-putting. So I'm pretty aware, but even now on the other side, and I'm in retirement and building a business and doing different things, I'm continuing to evolve and really just kind of look at myself. How am I showing up? How are people perceiving me? I would have those conversations too, like just a real conversation with employees, like during performance discussion. Hey, some feedback from me. How can I support you more? Is something I'm doing getting in your way? Talk to me about, specifics, or even in check-ins, right? So I do believe leadership is a two-way street. In again, the last several years, those roles that I was in, even they were very senior leaders that reported to me. We were collaborating. Yes, I was the boss. I didn't need to say I was the boss. It was, how do we collaborate together for the best outcome? My boss has an outcome, so I'm working with them. Let's collaborate and let's partner to get this done, with an understanding that at the end of the day, I had the last say, but I didn't need to say that. So I'm pretty aware. I'm sure there's some blind spots, because you get aware over here and maybe there's a new blind spot that pops up. But I try. Sometimes that's hard.
Yeah, it's underrated capability, I think. But I mean, again, it's one of those things I think people need to continue to work on, because, like you said, it's never going to be perfect. But I don't know, it's hard because you think you're self-aware. I think most people probably, I would guess if you ask most people, they probably would think they're self-aware, even if they are or not. Because it's kind of a weird question. It'd be weird to be like, yeah, I have no idea how personally anyone thinks of me. So I think I'm just, kind of guessing it. So in that sense, so you almost have to fight through that and say, well, am I really like seeing how people are reading me? Am I reading the room right? And it's not being a chameleon. It's you have to read the room. You have to, like, it's a partnership. It's a group, right? You can't just be like completely all the time and be by yourself. It's not your team. So self-awareness is key, and then awareness of the room, and as much as possible. Again, you're gonna miss something.
Yeah.
So I saw you moved up through most of the ranks at the FAA. In each jump and new area, did you not only being a woman, being Black, but also just moving up? Like, people just get automatically like, who's she? Who's that person? Did you feel like, was there some things you learned that you're like, this will help establish me to gain trust and be effective? Because I don't know how often you move, but again, people will be like, why did she get this job, or what is she going to do differently?
Yep.
So is there some things you learned to be like, this is how I can come in and be effective? Because a lot of times, by the way, you ran organizations with tens of thousands of people towards the end. And again, you don't know all these people. The message gets filtered.
It does.
So, how did you learn to kind of adapt to the next level?
That's a great question. I'm not sure I always did. I have a saying. So each of those levels, I took those positions. There was a lot of fear there. There was like, oh my gosh, am I really going to go and do this? How am I going to step into this, and how am I going to be effective in this role? And you have to fight through it, right? Of like, okay, I can figure this out. So number one, I always believed I could figure it out. It's whatever, I could figure it out. I learned by the time you get to like that third level manager, it's not about your technical competence anymore, right? Frontline manager, middle manager, you should understand that. But when you're managing, it's kind of like middle managers, you're not going to have the technical competence in all of those things. And so you've got to give yourself grace, or understand at that point, it's not about the technical expertise. Now it's about the strategy, setting strategy, using influence? How do I collaborate? So one thing that I did was giving myself permission that I didn't have to know it all, being okay. See, that's the key. When earlier in your career, it's about your individual contribution. And if you're knocking it out of the park, all of your success is because, hey, I delivered on this program that I'm running or this thing that I'm doing. And as you climb in your career, it's less about that. But if your career was built on that, it's hard letting that go. Yeah, I mean, it takes intentional work to say, okay, I'm not a technical expert. So now what am I doing here? What is my role? So I believe in hiring people smarter than me. See, I have zero problem with hiring people that are smarter than me about things that I don't know. I want people, first of all, I don't want a bunch of people around me that think like me. I don't want yes men or women around me. I literally want the kind of people who can look at me and say, you know what, Angela, here's why I'm not sure that that's the best way to go. Here's what I'm thinking, here's my perspective. So willingness to hire and bring people in that are better than I am at these things, I think helped me along the way.
I think that's sorry to interrupt, but that's a little bit of the courageous piece, right? Because a lot, an open reaction would be a little bit threatening, maybe like, oh, what's going to happen? But you took that step, right? Because you thought it'd make everybody better, including yourself.
Yes. Iron sharpens iron.
Yeah.
And it does, right? And so I was never afraid to do that. Not afraid to let other people shine. A point in time comes earlier in your career. Yes, you're driving. You want to be seen. You're like, I hope they see my good work. I hope they recognize me. And the more mature you become, you should be comfortable with letting other people shine. I am a person who I don't have a lack mentality. So everybody around me can be shining. That does not in any way minimize who I am, what I offer, and what I bring to the table. I like to look for opportunities for people to shine. I always come in and learn something. You've already interviewed some people that know me. I'm going to hey, okay, what are these orders? What are we doing? How does this work? Take me through the process. Let me just understand at a very high level. One person who hired me, let's talk about Tim Morrell, when he hired me asked me to come into the vice president role. What he said to me was, we are not looking for a technical expert. We want someone who can lead. How do you bring people together? How do you get the best out of people? How do you influence? He said that to me. That stuck with me because I thought, wait a minute. I'm just this woman who grew up in Detroit. I was a technician. What do I know about airspace development and airspace procedures and NOTAMs? Yeah, I certainly understood NOTAMs in terms of equipment outage, but what do I understand about all of the things that are going on in the background and all of the air traffic type of things? I'm not a controller. And so I did those jobs. I worked for Jeffrey Vincent. I had an opportunity early in my career to be an air traffic director down in Atlanta. What do I know about an air traffic director? So there were people around me who said, look, you can do this thing. And I believed that I could figure everything out, but I was scared every step away. And I tell people all the time, if you've called to it, if it's something that interests you, if it's something you can bring something to it, because I also believe that that's critically important. Don't just take a job for the sake of taking a job. What can you bring into that role as much as you're getting out of that role, right? So I think those are considerations. So I did these positions and I was like, yeah, I'm out here and I am nervous as how does that saying? I'm nervous. I'm nervous as a cat as a long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs.
Well, I think
not mine. I've heard it, but I use it. And so I was willing to get outside my comfort zone. And when I got outside my comfort zone, I had a lot of growth. And I went into each one of those roles knowing that the things that I had done to get me to the previous role wasn't going to help me be successful in the next role. So that goes to the part of being self-aware, getting in the role and really understanding, what do I need to do to be effective in this role? How do I ensure that I can meet the mission, we can accomplish all the things, and how do I bring employees with me, right? And so it's every role was an evolution. And I was laughing. It's been a very busy week this week here in DC, and I was thinking about how the last 5 years of my career they were really pivotal in my evolution.
Yeah. So you talked about the word fear. Again, goes back to the courage thing. Because some people may not want to take that step because, well, I guess if it doesn't work out, it could be a big bad decision that someone could make sometimes,
Mhm.
right? So that kind of it brings up the term imposter syndrome, right? I think I first of all, I have it. I think everyone feels it occasionally, right? It's actually, I think, a good thing. I saw something from a Harvard professor that said, if you don't feel that at all, you're some sort of like psychopath or something. There's something wrong with you. Like you're either not extending yourself far enough to grow, or something's wrong with you. Because it's a normal human reaction. Probably everybody has it. They don't come across maybe that way because it's maybe not a great way to come across, but it is a thing that I think people feel. And so, have you had anybody come to you? You know, you've had a lot of leaders that work for you. Would something like that, or you noticed it? And how did you get past some of that, or how did you help people get past?
Yes. I said I had the fear, and
Yes.
that fear a lot of times comes from, am I equipped? Am I sure I'm the right one? Oh my gosh, this isn't my background. I was just this. When I get over here, they're gonna figure out I don't know. Yes, that's all very real, and it has cropped up at different times. It's even cropped up now as you're building the business and you're potentially, pitching to people, working on speaking packages, and you're like, oh my gosh, I mean, why would they hire me? What, all those things kind of come up. It's human. Your brain is really trying to protect you because it is most of the time a step out of comfort zone. And that is where a tremendous amount of growth takes place. If you just stay status quo, there's not a lot of growth because you're not putting yourself into situations that are uncommon. And that's, the imposter syndrome pops up because you're in an uncommon space. For me, I pretty much can work myself through it, but I can work myself through it because just years of training, right? And being an executive coach and understanding that. But one thing that really helped me work through it is having, you've heard the term board of directors. So I had other colleagues around me, and I had a mix of colleagues, women, men, Black, white, Hispanic, that type of thing. So people from different backgrounds, technical, not technical, that I could talk to and say, hey, kind of here's what's going on. Here's what I'm thinking. Here's where my mind is. I can brainstorm with them or bounce ideas off of them. My people who come to me with that, it's that same board of directors type of thing to understand, okay, what's coming up for you? Step me through, what are you feeling? What's going on? And it's kind of getting behind the, what's the word? Peeling the onion back, if you will.
The root
Most of
cause.
the exactly, most of the time is literally they are about to embark on something that they have not done, and the brain has told you that there's all these stakes out there that you are dealing with, and helping them understand what is going on. Most of the time, having the opportunity to really talk it through and really coach them through, because a lot of my mentees, while I was working, they got a lot of coaching. They may not have understood that, but they were getting coached through what was coming up for them. What is the story? It's the story that we've told ourselves about what it is that we are going through. And that is some coaching. You can kind of coach yourself through that. Like, is this true? Or if this were true, what would it look like? Right. So there's questions that you can ask yourself about to step through. And most of the time when you step through and say, is this true? Well, no. Or what evidence do you have that this is true? When you start asking people to highlight the evidence, what is the tangible evidence that what they're telling themselves is true? Most people are able to say, that's not true. And you can also reflect back on a previous time in your life or career where you experienced success? What did you do that helped you be successful? What did you learn? And of that, what can you bring into this situation? So those are just some things to really help you with that. Most people won't do it. And that imposter syndrome and that fear will stagnate people because your brain will give you a series of pictures on why this thing is true and why you shouldn't do it because you're going to be embarrassed and you're going to be a failure and they're going to find out you're not smart and it will fill you with all of this narration going on in your head. And that will keep people from taking steps. You have to understand, do it anyway.
Yeah, I agree. Angela, you've written 2 books. The latest one was in 2018, I believe, right?
No, the latest one actually released in 24.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Mhm.
Is that the Beyond Gender and
Mhm.
Ethnic Stereotypes? Okay.
Yes.
So tell me about that book. That's an interesting title.
Yeah, the subtitle is How Women of Color Redefine Public Sector Leadership. And I always had this idea in the back of my mind when I was in graduate school and I was researching for projects. And I said, wow, there doesn't seem to be a lot of leadership books that are centered in the public sector. We read about, the Apple and Fortune 500 and Fortune 1000 and all those types of leadership books. But there didn't really seem to be a lot of leadership books that centered on the life of a public servant, right? What does it mean to be a leader and providing public service, right? The American public expects a certain thing. And this set of people have a direct impact on Americans, right? And so I started down this path of I interviewed all these different Black and brown women to understand their journey. And it was all executive women in various sectors of public sector, whether it was fire, police, federal, state, local, county, that type of government, and said, hey, I want to understand your journey. You got to the top of the journey. Tell us your story. And in those stories, there was a lot of lessons that we were able to learn out of each story. And what the book ended up, and then I interviewed like allies too, right? The end of the book was allies. It was men and women, Black and white, who had literally been allies. They had opened the door for women and women of color to come behind them. And because I wanted to really understand what is this dynamic that is going on here. And so there was things that cropped out of these stories, much like, we were talking about earlier, of what they overcame and how they did it and their identity and being comfortable in their own skin and understanding who they are and how they show up. And literally, it's the book that I believe, it's the book that I would have wanted in my 20s when I was thinking about having this career, but looking around and not really seeing women and definitely not seeing women of color in this space. It would have given me language to describe some things that I experienced on my journey, and it would have helped me understand that I wasn't alone. Because as I work with so many women, a lot of times they're the only one in their environment. People around them that they work with don't understand any of the challenges that they're experiencing, and they don't often feel like they have someone that they can talk to. And so if they pick up this book, there quite probably is a story of a woman in there having a very similar experience.
That's amazing. The board of directors almost for women. I think because not everyone has an access to a group of people you can talk to. That's really cool. You read that.
Oh,
that's awesome.
Thank you.
And where can we buy that book?
On Amazon.
Yes. Is there an audiobook yet?
No, it's not, but I've been thinking about going and I'm like, I love listening to authors who record their own books.
Yeah.
But then I also am a fan of AI, and there are some new tools out there. I think even Amazon has a tool that can help you turn your book into an audiobook, but I haven't yet.
It'd be great. And make it easier for me. I struggle with reading. That's not true, but it's easier, like
you can read in your car. Yeah.
Exactly. So if I ask you this, I'm going to ask you this. If you had a time machine and you can go back, kind of like Back to the Future, and tell your younger self, whether you're just getting out of the military or whatever time frame you think you want to go back to, is there a certain piece of, advice that you'd say, like, give yourself, and now that you've experienced your life?
it goes back to the book, Beyond Gender and Ethnic Stereotypes. Don't let people box you in. I have a firm saying right now that I believe, and I would have told myself that I define myself. You don't get to define me. You don't put labels on me. I do that for myself. So that fortitude of really knowing who you are, being comfortable in that scan, belief that I never imagined that I would have had the career that I had, that the doors would have opened. There are instances where people literally opened a door for me. I had put in the work. I had demonstrated. I had shown up and all the things. And they were like, yep, this is the person right here. I never imagined that the journey would have taken me into the spaces that it took me into and the impact and influence that I had. So I would have said, as much as I said, go big or go home, I would say dream even bigger, because my early career, I thought I would be a regional administrator, never imagining where I would really go. I blew past those doors in my mind, right? And I would say, girl, stop it. You could do so much more than you imagine. So don't let life, because life will happen. Things happen. Pain happens, illness, divorce, things happen along the way that can knock a lot of that out of you. And so I would say, yep, life happens, but don't let it knock things out of you. Use those experiences to propel you forward.
Very insightful. Angela, I want to congratulate you on, get this right, you're one of the top 30 global women thought leaders at the forefront of global transformation. This is from NBC. That's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I believe our common friend, Miss Tash Durkin,
Yes.
also is one.
Yes.
Yes. Well, tell me about this award and what's going on with all this.
It's so exciting. You see who is on that. It's crazy because that list people are on that list that are driving humanitarian change in the world. So when you talk about humility or being really humble, when I look at all of the women that are on that list and to be included with that, I know, I laugh but I mean this. You can change the world, right? For me, I came to understand this as a leader in terms of impacting the lives of the people that were around me. And one key idea I had is that I wanted to leave an organization better than when I left it. Not just better in terms of metrics and analytics. Let's be clear. I'm an A-type personality. If it's not a plus, I miss the mark type of thing, right? But to what extent could I have a positive impact on the culture that those employees work in? And is it a better culture where employees come in, they understand their work, they feel valued, they feel respected, they feel heard? That was important to me because I found those environments, you have better analytics, you drive. So it wasn't, I was doing it just so we could drive it. I did it because it's the right thing to do. And one of the greatest comments that I got from when he retired, and he actually was he a retired naval aviator or a retired Coast Guard aviator? He worked for me. He had retired and, he worked in the agency and he retired. And he said, and he and I, we had philosophical differences at different times. One thing he said to me was that he hadn't ever worked for a leader that had the right type of balance of the mission and the people. That always stuck with me. And hopefully, if he happens to tune in and hear this, he'll know I'm talking about him. For me, that meant everything, because people think it's one or the other. It's mission, 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 and run the people in the ground, or, well, the mission is here and maybe we'll hit it, but we're so people focused that we're not getting the job done. We're there we get paid. We have to deliver on something. And for me, I've heard that from this seasoned aviator man with more years of experience of leadership. And for him to say that to me, I was like, that is what I mean by changing the world in that little space, positively impacting those people around me. As a leader, that is your responsibility. So
That's amazing. And I think it's actually very hard to be in that, between the two, the mission and the people, and that balance is pretty hard. I feel like the line can be sometimes wavy,
it is.
depending on, what's going on. So we started a tradition of having the last guest ask the future guest the question. Our last guest was Mr. Nick Fuller, who's the acting deputy COO of the FAA. It's kind of a similar question to the time machine question, but it's a little different. Looking back, was there a mistake that you made as a leader? And now, knowing what you know, you would have maybe approached it different.
Yes, absolutely. I was a second level manager, so context matters. Second level manager, and one of the women that worked for me wanted the position that I just recently got. So she was bummed, and quite frankly, she was cold. I experienced her as cold. I experienced her as, we'd sit in these meetings and I felt like there was just staring. She just was quite unpleasant, in my opinion. That's how I was experiencing her. I'm going through the checklist and all these books and how I've read all these things and this is what I'm going to do to, try to understand what's going on with her. How do I empathize? Let me bring her in. Let me let her know that she's valued because the work she did, great work. Like the work that she did was great. It was her displeasure with, she felt, it was a job that she wanted that she didn't get. Also, we had two different styles and hers was not humanistic at all. So, that's a misalignment right there. And I'm doing everything that I possibly can to try and get to know her, to try and, I was learning the role, so seek her out to get information, to learn from her. Nothing was working. She was just completely turned off. And I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? She was ignoring me. She was going around me to my boss. It was not good. The mistake I made was trying to force a relationship with someone who was uninterested. She just didn't want it. She was not open, and there was nothing that I was going to do to help her to be open. And I tried for months until I finally said, okay, this is not working. I've tried to seek out all the things that I possibly could to try and make it better, and nothing was working. Big mistake. I learned it was apparent much earlier on. But see, I was stubborn because remember I said, I can figure anything out. That's a time when I can figure anything out. Didn't serve me at all. And it was creating even more tension. The other managers around were aware of it. What eventually ended up happening, because she was ignoring me and going around me to my boss, I finally just kind of had to step in with my boss and say, okay, wait a minute. She works for me. She doesn't feel like she has to listen to me because she has you. You got to step out of the middle of this and let me lead that. So that was number one. I finally had to put my foot down and say, stop. He did. He stopped. It forced her to have to at least deal with me, but it didn't make the situation any better. And it came to the point that it was creating toxicity. And quite frankly, I didn't believe that she had shown not to be an effective leader. She needed to move on to a different position, one that was really, it played to her superpowers. I helped her move on to a new opportunity. She was amazing in the opportunity. We had a different relationship then too. So she was never, as long as I was there and she felt like I was in the role that she wanted, and the misalignment, we were never going to, that was just dead. But it took me a while because I'm not I can figure people out. I could connect. I'm a human connector. I couldn't do any of it. That was such a huge lesson for me.
I think people do that where I've done it where, I need to connect. I'm going to get them to like me. I'm going to force this. Sometimes there's a different path, and it's not that, even though it probably does work a decent amount of time, right? That's probably why we keep doing it. So how? Or just connect, it'll be fine. Some people, it's not possible, at least in that circumstance.
Correct.
In a different circumstance, it might be good. Well, let me just one or two more questions. If you were to think of a question that you've been through this podcast, what's a question you would ask a future guest, another leader with a lot of experience and you've been through a lot. What's something you'd want to know?
I think a pretty good question. I'm always interested in how a leader, how do they effectively recover when it has
It's a great question. We all want to know that one.
Yeah. So I can't wait to hear who the next guest is and how they respond to it.
It's bound to go wrong at some point.
It is.
Sometimes worse than others. But,
Yeah.
And I think as a person, individual, you have to recover first almost, and then be able to help everybody else. So tell me about your company, Angela McCullough LLC, what you're up to, and kind of what you got in the future. What's next for you?
Oh, I love that idea. So I'm like, I've always been about started off in empowering employees and then working with women, and now I'm doing a lot of work around helping Black women show up with executive presence. That's a huge kind of topic because a lot of what we talk about what it means to have executive presence when we think about gravitas and those types of things, I don't necessarily fit into that mold. And so how am I able to be an effective leader in those rooms where there's a certain level of presence and authority that is required? How do I do that in a way that's in alignment with my identity in who I am? Right. So I'm doing a lot of work. I'm working with clients on that. This year, my goal is really out on that speaker scene. I love it. I love getting in front. I love getting out and about in front of a room. And it always is about sharing the benefit of what I learned along the way, what went well, what didn't go well, and what are the lessons that I can impart on the next generation. That is super exciting for me. Of course, in all of the aviation work that is going on, I am also launching Sky a drone lab, and I'm very committed to how do we ensure that we use these new technologies to the benefit of communities that are not served or communities that are underserved, if you will. There's a lot of exciting promise in some countries on the African continent. Of course, as you know, there's some good work that's going on for some medical type delivery here stateside, and I'm incredibly passionate about that type of work. And so I have to figure out where I want to really plant my flag there and ensuring that we don't forget the least of these, because that is one of the concerns why we're all excited about the new frontier and technology that's coming. Let's make sure that we are considering the humanistic or opportunities for using some of these technologies in social justice or poor communities, and I'm talking urban and rural. And so I'm excited to see what 26 bears out there and what the opportunities are there. So I think this next chapter is all about the two entities, my work working with women, and then my work ensuring that technology is serving those that really need it.
It's amazing. You get nervous when you do the talks?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, all the time.
Who doesn't? I don't know.
I love it. I mean, I'm always like, I have this set of butterflies for a moment, and then I'm okay. And then because my talks sometimes fly in the face of what people think or what people believe, and so there's that little bit of like, I said what I said, and here's what I believe. And there's some nervousness that comes from standing in what you believe in and walking in that and trying to educate or other people in that, because there's always naysayers. But hey, I like a good debate. They will tell you, Jeff will tell you, I like a good hearty debate, because I believe particularly that professionals, and especially at the levels that I was at, you debate ideas. That's how you get the best idea. As long as you're not attacking people, then I'm good.
Amazing. So if somebody wants your help, a leader or anybody wants your leadership coaching, all that kind of stuff, how do they find you?
They can always email me. It's very easy. Angela@angelamccullough.com. Yes, I haven't been as active on LinkedIn, but that is changing in 26. I've spent it's a lot been going on since I retired, and giving myself a little bit of time to kind of just take a deep breath, reflect, really get clarity on where I want to work now. And having that clarity, I'll be much more active on LinkedIn, I have a newsletter and all of that. And so people, they can find me at my email, and I'm pretty responsive.
Amazing. Well, I'm excited for you. Appreciate your time. Thank you for teaching us to be how to be direct, but also care about people and being human. Appreciate your time. It was an honor. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited. I love going on podcasts and just being able to talk and just share, knowing that if you at least touch one person, like one person's going to listen to this, like, oh, this is exactly what I needed to hear right now, and it's going to help me, then my job is done. So thank you for having me.
Of course. Thank you.